In this lesson, we're going to go over the Finder preferences, which controls the overall behavior of the Finder and what's displayed when we're working inside of the Finder. I'm going to do this by going to the Finder menu and choosing Preferences. And this opens up the Finder Preferences window. Now I'm going to begin by going to the General category by clicking on the General button at the top of the window. And this allows me to control what is displayed on my desktop. So for instance, if I click the Hard Disks checkbox, it's going to display any hard disks that I have connected to my computer. I'm going to uncheck that for now. And I can also choose to show external disks, CDs, DVDs, and iPods, and connected servers. In addition, I can control what is the first folder that I view when I open a new Finder window. By default, when I do that, it automatically goes to my home folder. However, I could change that to any folder that I want to by either choosing one of the ones that are listed in this menu or choosing Other and selecting a specific folder that I'd like to become my default folder. If you work on a lot of jobs, you may want to choose the specific job folder that most of your client files or favorite files are stored in. I can also choose whether to open folders in a new window or not. So, for instance, when I double-click on any of these folders, it's simply opening it up in the next column. But if I turn this option on, it's going to open each one as a separate window. So that's a preference you can choose whether you want or not. I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then finally, spring-loaded folders and windows. What that is that if I go to move a file or folder, I'm going to begin by going to the Home folder in the Pictures folder. Let's say I wanted to move my Nature folder to a different directory or folder. If I click on the Nature folder and hold down with my mouse, I'm going to drag this over top of my hard drive. When I hover for a while, it then changes to the contents of that folder. So if I hover over Users, it then opens the Users folder, Chad, Documents, and then when I let go, it actually ends up being copied to the Documents folder. I'm going to move that back to the Pictures folder for now. And so what spring-loaded folders preference controls is whether that's enabled or not, and how long of a delay occurs before the next folder is open. I can set that to short or long. I'll put that back to medium. Next is the Labels category. What labels do is allow me to identify files as different labeled items. So if I go to my Home folder, go to the Pictures folder, into Creative, if I click on a file, so in this case I'm choosing apple.jpg, I can go to the File menu and go to the Label category at the very bottom and specify a color for this file. So if I choose green and I click off of that file, you can see that that file is now labeled as green. I can click on another one. Another way that I can label is by holding the Control key on my keyboard and choosing the label from the contextual menu that appears. So the nice thing about this is that I will often identify files based on what needs to be done. If files need to be worked on or need to be moved, I might label them accordingly. And although I can't customize the color of the labels themselves, I can adjust the name. So sometimes I will label these as maybe green would be needs to be worked on, red means they're no good, and maybe orange means need approval. So different things like that are ways you can utilize labels. If I click on the Sidebar category, this controls what is displayed in the sidebar of every Finder window. So for instance, right now, the Devices category is displaying any hard disks, external disks, the iDisk, or CDs, DVDs, and iPods. If I uncheck all of these, they all disappear from the sidebar. And this is actually new in Snow Leopard, where the category disappears if none of the devices are listed. So I'll just turn these four back on. And I can also choose whether to show shared items, favorite places, and also searched areas. Now, one note about the sidebar that you should be aware of is that this can be customized too. If I click on my Applications folder, maybe I want to add an application or maybe a favorite place. Let's do this. Let's click on the Home folder and go to the Pictures folder. And maybe I always want this Pictures folder to appear in my Places. So if I click on this folder and I drag over here to the sidebar, I'm continuing to hold the mouse button down. You see how I get this line with a circle to the left of it? That's what you want. If you get this highlighted area, it means you're going to move the pictures folder into this folder. So I'm just going to move down or up and position the pictures folder, and now it's added to the sidebar. In addition, you can remove an item from the sidebar very easily by just clicking on it and dragging it out of the sidebar. So back to our preferences window, the last category is the advanced section, and this allows me to show all file name extensions for every file inside of any window that I'm viewing. So if I turn this on, you can see that all of these icons get the .app extension. This off. And then we can also choose to show warning before changing an extension. This basically helps you to keep the proper extension for each file. So for instance, if I try to give a TIFF image the JPEG extension, it'll give me a warning because that could cause a problem later on. I can also choose to show a warning before emptying the trash, and that's just a secondary warning that says, do you really want to empty the trash? If you don't like that, we can uncheck it and it'll never ask me again. You could choose to empty trash securely, and what this does is it writes over the area of your hard drive where that data used to be. Probably not really needed for most people, but if you're really sensitive about your information and want to make sure that it never gets into the wrong hands, you might want to turn that option on. And then finally, when you're performing a search, you can choose where the default search is going to begin, from the current Mac, the current folder, or the previous search scope. So I'll change this to the current folder. And I'm going to close any open Finder windows. I'm going to close the Finder Preferences. And utilizing that Finder Preferences window allows you to really customize the Finder the way